The following program is sponsored by Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County. This episode of Mosaic is brought to you in part by the Stacy and Mark Levy Center for Israel and Overseas.
Welcome to our 46th season of Mosaic. I'm your host, Susan Shulman Pertnoy. Mosaic is Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County's weekly news magazine, exploring the most critical issues facing Jews here and around the world. Despite ceasefires with Hamas and Hezbollah, Israel faces a long road of recovery ahead. I was proud to be one of the leaders from our federation who traveled there recently. We discuss our experiences and the plans for the future next on Mosaic. We're so proud to celebrate our community visionaries, donors who contribute $1 million or more, serving as an inspiration for all of Jewish Palm Beach.
The Activate Jewish Life movement is a first of its kind, intends to connect with families with children, to connect with teens, to connect with young adults. However people want to engage with Jewish life, we want to make sure that we are providing them with an opportunity to engage in ways that have relevance and meaning for them. What an opportunity we have to change the face of Jewish life.
Welcome back. Joining us today is the newest board chair of our Jewish Federation, Berg, and also our president and CEO, Michael Hoffman. Welcome, gentlemen, to Mosaic.
Thank you for having us.
The three of us recently returned from a very unique trip to Israel. And today I'd like to discuss all of the profound experiences that we had. So let's start with you, Michael. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the mission of the goal of the mission.
So we were invited to participate by Jewish Federations of North America, which is the umbrella organization for the Jewish Federation system across the country. This is a high-level leadership mission. The goal of this mission was for us to assess the needs and the challenges facing the state of Israel post-October 7th and post the war in the northern part of Israel. We went up to the border of Lebanon, of Israel and Lebanon, which is still a closed military zone. And we were in the towns of Kiryat Shmona and Metula to really assess the damage and the impact that 15 months of hundreds and hundreds of rocket attacks on those communities has had upon those communities, and to meet with our partners in Israel to assess and determine what is the future of Israel and what role can we be playing as a Jewish Federation through philanthropy to rebuild Israel physically and also emotionally.
Build Back Better was the theme.
Build Back Better.
Yes.
Right.
So when we arrived early in the morning, we went right to Hostage Square. Barry, I think it was the first time that you had been there, and it was a unique day. Can you talk about that?
Well, it was very unique because the day before was when the release of the first three hostages happened, and then we
on the latest hostage agreement.
Of the latest agreement, right? And then we went to see Hostage Square and everything that was there, and it's quite moving. I remember what got to me the most was they have a tunnel that they've kind of created there. And when I was took 10 steps into the tunnel, I was already claustrophobic and nervous, and I couldn't imagine what these people had gone through for weeks and months, of being confined to these very terrible conditions.
Yeah, inhumane. I was struck by the condition. I've been there numerous times now, as Michael has, and there's this one very long table that accommodates all of the hostages. And every time I'd go, there'd be a different theme of how the table was set up.
Right.
This time, there was a disheveled sukkah that was there, because that's symbolic of the night that this all happened, the night prior. And then the table was filthy. It was exuding the horrors and the death. It just symbolized death, and it
Right.
was very profound to me. How about you, Michael?
You know, the table, again, they set the table in Hostage Square pretty soon after October 7th to really make sure that we were providing as much advocacy as possible for the hostages. Over 200 at the time. Now it's down to about 90 or so, less a few that have been released. And I remember one of our first trips, 220 or so, or over 200 chairs of just people are being held in these deplorable conditions against their will by Hamas. And now, it's down to about half of that, but it's such a stark reminder of the trauma that the Israelis are still facing. It's a reminder of these 100 Israelis are still being held somewhere in Gaza, against their will, and it's a reminder that we still have a long way to go to ensure that we're doing as much as we can to advocate for the release of all of the hostages, all the Israelis being held in Gaza.
Absolutely. And from there, we started our trek north, and we met with some leaders, some from our partnership region, which is Hatzor, Hagalit, Tzfat, and Rosh Pina, and all in the surrounding municipalities, of which there are 94 that have been affected by the war. But there's a theme that was running through it, and the Israelis, I was struck by one gentleman that was addressing us during the first night's dinner, and he was just so proud of the fact that he lived in the north, and he was trying to relay that to his daughter, his 16-year-old daughter. We're pioneers. We're Zionists. This is the home of Zionism. We need to be here, and we'll build back, and we just have to maintain life and the thriving life in the north. Did you hear the resilience?
I was really struck by, again, we talk about Israel and the Chalatzim and the Chalatzot and the pioneers of Israel 75, 80 years ago. And you think about Israel now as a sort of startup nation. And what we really heard is that, look, we've heard consistently in all of our trips to Israel since October 7th, the government is very focused on security. They're very focused on the war. And so you've seen sort of civil engagement in Israel really rise. There was a stat we heard on this trip that over 50% of Israelis, that's 5 million Israelis, have volunteered in some capacity. And so you're seeing kind of civic engagement to elevate Israeli society during these very, very challenging times. So right now what we're seeing is these younger Israelis kind of continue to kind of maintain that pioneer Zionistic attitude, but also taking kind of the concept of innovation and startup nation to help kind of rethink what should the northern part of Israel look like. All the towns up north, and we were in Metula, they're all completely bombed out. And the towns down in the southern part of Israel, in the Gaza envelope, 11 kibbutzim, significant amount of redevelopment has to take place. And so it's not just rebuilding, it's about rethinking how these communities in the north and in the south can reestablish themselves to once again be beacons of Israeli society through innovation.
We're going to talk more about that and the new technology in combination with the pioneering spirit after we take a brief pause. We'll be right back after this message. Stay with us. More from our leadership mission to Israel is ahead on Mosaic.
Israel's economic security is at risk. The October 7 terrorist massacre and Israel-Hamas war are having a disastrous effect on small businesses in Israel. Now there's a way for you to help safeguard the financial stability of millions of people. Visit jewishpb.org/loansdonate or scan this QR code to learn about Federation's Israel Emergency Relief Business Loan Program.
Did you know that you can now enjoy Mosaic on the go? Listen to the Mosaic podcast by scanning the QR code on the screen or find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Hi, we're back with Barry Berg and Michael Hoffman, the leaders of our Jewish Federation, talking about a special mission that we recently returned from to Israel. We met with a woman, Danielle Abraham, who is the president of an organization called Regrowth. Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So Danielle, she really epitomizes this sort of this amazing entrepreneurial spirit in Israel. What her organization has been doing is help support the agricultural communities, the moshavim, the kibbutzim in the northern part of Israel and in the south. So for example, in the south, when Hamas invaded in the Gaza envelope, they went to all the kibbutzim, they stole all of the tractors, destroyed all of the irrigation systems. And in the north, through the Hezbollah bombing, all of the farming equipment has basically been wiped out. What Regrow is doing is working with philanthropy in the North American Jewish community and the Jewish Federation system. So for example, they've helped purchase new tractors that can help the southern part of Israel reestablish the agricultural communities, new irrigation systems. Up north, they're also looking at sort of how do you basically take the agricultural sort of community and agricultural business, in essence, reinvent it. There are new systems, there's new technologies, there's new ways in which to produce agriculture in a more efficient way. So again, it goes back to this sort of Israel is still the startup nation, and they're taking this horrific event of the war over the past 15 months, and they're using it to rethink how they can take the agricultural community and build it back better. And again, continue to kind of rethink ways in which they can be producing agriculture that is a major export for Israel and reestablish the economy in Israel.
I can't emphasize enough the fact that Hamas and Hezbollah were extraordinarily strategic in how they knew what they needed to do to blow up the agricultural industry in Israel and cause food insecurity. They were trying to just totally destroy everything that they could. So the animals, the equipment, the crops. I mean, it's amazing what we're able to do. And right away, the farmers went back under fire, some of them, to make sure that the animals that survived were cared for and then immediately started to replant their crops. It's really quite something.
This is a very important aspect of the redevelopment in the north and the south, because if they don't have a strong economic base, they're not going to attract the residents to come back. Because don't forget, 90,000 people have been relocated from the north to different parts of Israel. And that's, of course, part of the issue. And part of what we observed was how to get these people back, give them security, give their children the education they need, and of course the economic opportunities, because they have to be able to make a living.
Right, and what happened in light of the fact that they were evacuated, a lot of them were evacuated to the central part of Israel, where the education is superior, the health opportunities, as well as there were social services and social recreational aspects that they don't have in the north. So a very big part of this is how to entice people to come home. And
it's important to note that the northern part of Israel, the periphery in the north and the south, historically has been a part of the country that has been somewhat economically and socially depressed. And the challenge for Israel now, which we heard loud and clear, is you had thousands and thousands of people that were basically forced to evacuate and move to the center part of the country. When they lived up in Metula and other parts of the country, the closest hospital was an hour away. The education was basically subpar. subpar. And to go to see a movie, you had to drive to Tzfat or Haifa, which is, again, a 45 minutes to an hour away. You're living in the center of the country. You have better access to a job, better access to healthcare. It's a stronger educational system. So why would you move back to the north? But at the same time, if you don't move back to the north, then the northern border of Israel will have shrunk by about 9 kilometers.
And
that's not an
win.
option.
Right.
And the terrorists win. And that's not an option from a security perspective and from a Zionist perspective, which is why it's so important that the government, and working with philanthropy, find ways in which that we can entice people and inspire them to move back to the north, to Barry's point, where they have security, that's the role of the government, where they have strong education for their children, and they have access to good jobs, and they have access to healthcare.
One of the ways that we are trying to entice people to move back is through Bar-Ilan's University Association with Israeli Medical School. And they're looking towards the future of trying to entice people to come back by building a major campus and offering high school students to take classes at the medical school. And they're very excited. And JDC, the American Joint Distribution Committee, is helping to create a strategic plan where they can follow this to actualize it.
Right.
Anybody want to comment on that?
Well, I would say that that's another example of something that we saw this time, which, having been going to Israel for more than 30 years and many, many trips, noticing that now there's a discussion of a partnership between the philanthropy in the United States, the Israeli government, and the philanthropists in Israel.
Yes.
To help rebuild and to help with all these new opportunities. So I think that's a very productive message to hear, that the Israeli philanthropists are now taking a major role. And we did have an opportunity to meet with one of them, Ronnie Duick, in his home in Tel Aviv, and it was to me, it was very inspiring.
Yes, absolutely. It's actually somewhat new to have Israelis
Exactly.
as philanthropists and having a vested interest.
Well, I think it also goes to why this tragic experience is so existential to the people and to the state of Israel. And if we don't think about new types of these partnerships of philanthropists from around the world, North American Jewish community, here in our Palm Beach community, working in collaboration with the Israeli government, working in partnership with these newer philanthropists in Israel, all of us have a role to play. It's a unique point in all of our lives that we are actively participating in the rebuilding of Israel. And we have not seen that since the 67 war or 73 war. This is our defining moment to think what we want Israeli society to look like, coming out of the depths of sorrow and horror and trauma, to build Israel and help elevate Israeli society, especially in the north and in the south, in the way that we can say we tangibly made dramatic contributions to support and elevate Israeli society.
I would say one other thing that we noticed, maybe we should have said at the beginning, but that wherever we went and whoever we met with, the very first words out of their mouth were, "Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for support. Thank you for your philanthropy. And thank you for taking the time to come and see, what our needs are here in our part of the country."
We have to take our final break. We'll be right back after this brief message. Coming up, we discuss the future of the Jewish homeland. That's next on Mosaic.
Since October 7th, we have seen our community come together in ways we could not have anticipated. And that's what led to the Activating Jewish Life movement. The Activate Jewish Life movement is a first of its kind, intends to connect with families with children, to connect with teens, to connect with young adults, and ensure that they always feel as though they're part of something larger than themselves, being part of a larger Jewish community. It's such a unique opportunity to be able to launch a bold initiative just like this. The Activate Jewish Life movement is going to be a game changer. However people want to engage with Jewish life, we want to make sure that we are providing them with an opportunity to engage in ways that have relevance and meaning for them. Thanks to our partners in the Jewish community and our Federation agencies, what an opportunity we have to change the face of Jewish life.
February is Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month. Jewish Federation and the Jewish Disabilities Network are committed to the inclusion of people with disabilities in our community. Learn more at jewishpb.org/JDN. We're back talking about rebuilding bigger and better. Let's discuss this.
So the government of Israel and the local municipalities and cities in the northern part of Israel, they recognize coming out of this war, as we're in this sort of day after mode or entering the day after mode, that in order to, again, to find ways to sort of incentivize people to move back to the north, they have to rethink what does education and healthcare look like. And one of the areas is, as you talked about, Tel Chai College has now basically applied to be reaccredited to be a university. That will allow it to sort of dramatically expand its offerings from an academic perspective and a professional training perspective, from agri-tech to mental health to healthcare to biotech to engineering. Again, one of the ways that will entice people to move back to the north, as we keep talking about, is do they have good housing, do they have good education, and will they be able to find jobs? And by having a university, a major university in the northern part of Israel, that will allow them to basically establish these basic building blocks. Because if not, the closest universities, it's in Haifa, it's Tel Aviv, it's in Jerusalem, that's several hours away. Small country, but it's still, a good hour and a half to go from Kiryat Shmona to Haifa. It's a couple hours to go down to Tel Aviv, 3 hours to go to Jerusalem. So it's an important way to rethink what the North could look like coming out of this horrific war from October 7th.
And the fact that they're already on it without the outside philanthropic dollars is very impressive.
It's an entrepreneurial spirit that the leaders in Israel, in the northern part of Israel, have right now, is that they know that in order to ensure that people move back to the northern part of the country, they're going to have to reestablish what core infrastructure, what education looks like, what healthcare looks like. There's a significant housing initiative that's going to have to be developed in the north. They're starting one in the south, where there's 1,000 new homes being built along the Gaza envelope, in addition to rehabilitating or rebuilding the kibbutzim in the south that have been utterly destroyed.
Can you share some stories that stand out to you about what went on there, or what we heard?
I think that was very meaningful to spend time in Metula. We were taken around by the mayor, who spent.
How close is it to the border?
It's like, well, we're standing on the border, right at the fence, and we were watching the IDF blow up caches of munitions in Lebanon. That were, Hezbollah munitions that they were destroying in Lebanon. And he was telling us, don't worry, that's the IDF there. You don't have to be afraid. But he told us that there's about 600 homes in the town of Metula, and about 450 of them have been damaged to some extent. Some we saw, which were utterly destroyed by rockets from Hezbollah. And then he took us down he remained, even though the people of Metula were required to evacuate by the government. He actually remained there with probably a handful of his core aides. And he showed us the bunker, basically, which was under City Hall, which was where he was living.
Right.
And not only did he have like a little place to sleep down there, but also he had this whole array of cameras, monitors, that where he could see all around what was going around all around the community and keep track of everything that was going on.
Yeah, and he reported back to his community members.
Right.
Michael, do you recall any stories that resonate with you?
We had the opportunity to meet with a young woman named Omer, who she was 15 years old. Omer lives in a moshav, a small village about 10 minutes away from Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is one of the kibbutzim which was utterly devastated on October 7th. She has aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents who live on Kibbutz Nir Oz. She went there on October 6th. She was actually supposed to sleep over, but at the last minute decided to go back to her home on her moshav because she had to study for a test. The next morning, she woke up in her house. She heard about all the news. Her cousins were texting her about all of the trauma and the horror taking place on Kibbutz Nir Oz. She and her family, they actually had to evacuate because they were in danger. They lived down in a lot for about a year. They moved back to their moshav. And this past summer, she had an opportunity to participate in a program called Campers Together, which is a program that we fund through our allocations and Israel emergency funds through the Jewish Agency for Israel. They took 1,000 Israeli teens this summer, and they're allowed to spend 2 weeks, or they had the opportunity to spend 2 weeks in an overnight Jewish camp. Omer went to Camp Ramah in the Berkshires. She spent 2 weeks there. And we asked her, what was it like? And she said it was just amazing to be in a camp and feel that support. When they arrived at camp, all of the American kids, the campers, they basically put their arms together and they sort of welcomed them with open arms. And I asked her, what was the thing you love to do most at camp? And she said, I love Agam. I love to go to the lake. It was quiet. I didn't hear any jets flying overhead. I didn't hear any sirens. I was able to sleep through the night. It was just solace. And being at camp for 2 weeks, it brought me back from the dead. And to me, that was just one of the most impactful things. The trauma that every single Israeli is facing right now, these kids, this beautiful 15-year-old girl who reminded me of my daughter, what she has gone through, and just being at camp for those 2 weeks, the respite that it gave her, and it just, again, to hear it brought her back from death. So moving.
Yeah, her story was chilling,
Yeah.
and she spoke in such a matter-of-fact manner when she was relaying it. I mean, her family all died. So it's very powerful.
It just reminds me of the work that we do, thanks to the philanthropy of the community, the generosity. We're able to help all these, these amazing, inspirational women like Omer who are so resilient, because they're the ones who are going to be sort of building Israel back. They're the ones who are going to be serving in the army. We're building Israel back for Omer and all of her friends and all of her family. And with that, we can't do that without the generosity of our community.
On that note, thank you so much for joining us. It was really an incredible trip. What an experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
This program is sponsored by Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County.